Hi, welcome to the first of my pregnancy and childbirth educational video clips. It's great to be with you. These video clips complement information that's already available in the question and answer section of my website. The first topic that I'd like to consider is that of when will my baby turn head down. Why this topic? Because this is the most popular question sought on my website. It's also frequently asked to me by patients. So I thought it would be a good one to start with. When will my baby turn head down? In early pregnancy, there's absolutely no reason for the baby to adopt any particular position whatsoever. That's because there's a lot of liquor there, and relative to the amount of liquor, the baby is quite small, so it can turn quite freely in the gestational sac. It's not until later in pregnancy when the baby gets bigger and the relationship between the baby's size and the amount of liquor changes, so that it becomes a lot more cramped. Ladies know it becomes more cramped towards the end because they frequently comment they are aware of a change in the baby's movements. So the baby goes from being very active and kicking a lot to what they say is quiet. The baby is less active. What actually is happening is because the baby is more cramped, the baby tends to be more into a rolling phase. So they're aware of the baby's rolls, but not the firm kicks, because there's a lot less space inside the uterus for the baby towards the end of the pregnancy. As pregnancy advances, the baby would like to adopt the position that's most comfortable for it, and that's where the area of the baby with the greatest mass, that's the buttock area, is towards the top of the uterus, and that means the head is towards the bottom of the uterus. So the baby naturally wants to turn head down. Why? Because that's a much more comfortable for the baby to be in as the pregnancy advances and there's less room for the baby to move. At the onset of the third trimester, about 1/3 of babies are not yet head down. So if you're entering the last trimester and your baby's not head down, don't be concerned. There's still plenty of time. At 32 weeks pregnancy, about 12% of babies not head down, and at 37 weeks of pregnancy, about 3% are not head down. So as we move through the third trimester, gradually more and more babies adopt a head down position. Usually once a baby adopts a head down position in advanced pregnancy, it tends to stay head down, though this is not always the case for various reasons. When we talk about a baby not being head down, most people are referring to a breech presentation. A breech presentation is when the head is towards the top of the uterus and the bottom is towards the cervix area, or the bottom of the uterus. There'll be other scenarios. There can be a transverse lie, where the baby lies across the uterus with the head on one side and the bottom on the other. And there can be an oblique lie, where the head is down towards the pelvis but on one side, or up towards the top of the uterus towards the side. So the baby has an oblique lie. And finally we have the unstable lie. That's where the baby moves a lot, and 1 week it's head down, next week it's head up, next week it's transverse. So it moves quite a lot during the pregnancy, and sometimes this continues right up to the end for various reasons. A pregnant woman usually knows when the baby goes head down. It often happens when she's sleeping, relaxed at night. She'll have an uncomfortable night, and she wakes up the next day and recognises that feels different. And she can feel more pressure of the head down towards the pelvis. She's also aware that the kicks are more up towards the top of the uterus, whereas they were more obvious down towards the bottom of the uterus. There are various reasons why it's more difficult for some babies to turn head down, and they fall into different categories. The first category I'll consider is that where the uterus has got an abnormality. It could be a developmental abnormality. We call that a Mullerian duct anomaly, and there's various ones. The most common one would be a bicornuate or heart-shaped uterus. There also can be abnormalities such as uterine fibroids. So a uterine fibroid could be distorting the cavity, and it makes it much more difficult for that baby to turn head down. It can be an abnormal shape to the brim of the pelvis, which makes it more difficult for the baby to turn head down and for the head to get into the pelvis. There could be abnormality of the liquor volume. It could be excessive. If you have excessive liquor volume, we call that hydramnios or polyhydramnios. That means there's a lot more room for the baby in the uterus in advanced pregnancy, and so the baby can adopt different positions. So there's no reason why the baby needs to be head down if you have hydramnios. There's less glycol than usual. We call that oligohydramnios. Then it's much harder for the baby to turn head down. So if the baby's been in, say, a breech position and there's less glycol, it makes it much more difficult for that baby to turn around. It can have to do with where the placenta is located. So if there's a placenta previa scenario, that is, the placenta is low and covering the cervix, then it's more difficult for the baby to be head down. If there is a fundal placenta, so the placenta is up the top of the uterus, but quite a short cord, then it will be much more difficult for that baby to turn. I had that scenario the other day. There can be baby problems. There can be developmental abnormalities where the baby has got quite a large head. This could be associated with a condition called hydrocephalus. They're not always the case. If the head is large, then it'll be more difficult for the baby to be head down. The baby can have a tumour of the neck. That will mean it's more difficult for it to be head down. If it's a multiple pregnancy, then it will be more difficult for both to turn head down. One can prevent the other from adopting that head down position. If it's preterm labour, as I mentioned, the incidence of not being head down is greater in earlier pregnancies. So if a woman goes into labour, say 28, 30 weeks, then there's about 25-30% chance that when she goes into labour, the baby will not be head down. And finally, there is personal and family history. So if your previous baby was breech, you're more predisposed to the next baby being breech. If there are family members that have had breech presentation, then you are more predisposed to having a breech presentation. I'll be discussing management considerations if your baby is not head down in advanced pregnancy in another video clip. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.